The concept or philosophy in storytelling of making things rhyme is riddled throughout the Star Wars saga. Time and time again, George Lucas would find ways to purposefully, or even unintentionally, make his trilogies rhyme with one another. Whether it was through narrative, theme, plot, symbolism, setting, point of view, or any other major element in literature, the idea of making things familiar was at the forefront, or more importantly, showing how they're different, as their differences would allow the creator to highlight to the audience what they felt was important. And two events that showcase this concept beautifully are the battles of Geonosis and Hoth. In this video, I want to mostly touch on Hoth, and in part 2, my friend and Starin Cantina will be going over Geonosis. In a series with war in the title, the idea of a battle taking place is, well, expected, but it's really about where it takes place. So the location or setting is used to paint a picture of the greater meaning. Star Wars does a great job of this in general, as each planet tends to feel vastly different from the next, usually using real-world singular biomes or ecosystems to engulf the entirety or near entirety of the planet. This allows for each planet to have a different feel and support the narrative in a different way. Endor or Kashyyyk being a lush forest filled with life, Dagobah being a murky swamp, Coruscant a metropolitan city, Bespin can look like heaven while Mustafar like hell, Geonosis a red rock desert, and in the case of Hoth, a frozen tundra. Winter or snow in literature can have many meanings. It can symbolize sadness, death, struggle, and hardship, things that the main characters of Empire Strikes Back either endure or embody throughout the film. For Luke, the severely harsh conditions are a metaphor for the conflict that he will face moving forward, as snow is difficult to move in, foreshadowing the tests and struggles he will face not only with the Empire, the fate of his friends, his journey to become a Jedi, and his internal conflict with the idea of good and evil, as he faces the gray that the galaxy is made up of beyond the black and white way he viewed it in the first film, challenging his naive and optimistic outlook as he takes these next steps. For Han and Leia, they each struggle with not only coming to terms with how they feel about each other, mostly Leia, but as well with caring for others beyond just themselves, mostly Han. They're cold to one another and constantly bickering, but they just don't want to be the first to show their true feelings. Both of these concepts further their development, as Han must learn to truly become selfless, and Leia must learn to become a bit more self-interested, and not as opposed to showing a more vulnerable side, as opposed to the strong leader she shows herself to be in front of the rebels she commands. For Vader, not only here but throughout the movie, is the idea of fear and death itself. He is the catalyst, along with the Empire itself, that causes this struggle with our heroes as they're pushed to the brink. Whether it's physically, with his pursuit of Luke at the beginning, and the Millennium Falcon throughout, but mentally and emotionally with Luke, as he threatens the lives of those he cares about most, and he must question his ideals, simply being a force of nature himself. And similar to the environment he's in, Vader can be described as simply cold, from his cruel treatment of his subordinates to his devious one-liners, and even physically with the hissing breath that comes from his mask. Surprisingly though, Vader goes through a bit of his own struggle to resist the re-emergence of Anakin Skywalker, as this battle is the first time we see the man under the mask, all culminated with the famous line, "I am your father." Hoth emphasizes the struggle for the rebels. Since the last time we saw them, while they may have won, they have been constantly under duress and had to weather the worst conditions in order to simply survive. Snow is usually something that animals hibernate under, and the rebels have done something similar, as they're using it as a disguise and a means to survive the cold winter and death that the Empire brings. The Empire themselves are now the snow, reinforcing the idea of what the galaxy is like under their regime, as a frozen tundra typically doesn't allow life to grow or flourish, and the Empire does the same, not allowing their people to thrive, acting as a storm that will extinguish the fire that resides in its people, starting with the Rebel Alliance. The Empire is such a danger that the rebels are willing to survive in an extremely hostile environment, with a biting cold where the trade-off is that it's not as violent as the Empire's methods, putting into perspective that it takes that much level of discomfort to be safe from the Empire. That is, until they found them. The idea of fear, struggle, and death are made apparent throughout the film, and Snow highlights that here with something that we can all visually relate to, as snow makes it difficult for things to grow in nature. So is the same for the rebellion and our heroes. It's also difficult to see in snowy weather, similar to the lines,
"Always in motion is the future. Clouded this boy's future is."
It's hard to tell where the story will go and the evil that's at work. It also means that things are not what they seem, similar to both the unassuming Yoda being a Jedi Master and the evil Darth Vader being more human than machine. Additionally, the symbol of clouds and smoke is prominent in Empire Strikes Back. It all conveys the uncertainty about what's good or bad as our heroes press forward. The battle itself brings to light the idea of people with faces versus those that are masked. While human, it makes them seem more robotic as they're all identical. It's also the concept of the government oppressing its people and the people rebelling and fighting back for their freedoms.
The more you tighten your grip, Tarkin, the more star systems will slip through your fingers.
The rebels also have colorful outfits and technology, where the Empire is lacking color and diversity in their uniform and their ships, as they have an industrial look where it is pure, unpainted steel, making everything seem more lifeless as there's less individuality, as the Empire is about enforcing the ideas of one dictator. The trench warfare utilized is also reminiscent of World War I military tactics, as it's their only means of survival. The Empire also just bulldozes through the area commonly referred to as No Man's Land, which emphasizes just how strong they are, and a few times the rebels are shown retreating through it, and it only spells doom for them. They're forced to get creative because they are at a significant disadvantage technologically, whereas the Empire has a great ship advantage with their massive, deadly, and nearly impenetrable AT-ATs, highlighting their dominance over the rebels, although they have faltered tactically, as Admiral Ozzel mistakenly comes out of lightspeed too close to Hoth, and it gives the rebels the chance to shield up and prepare for any bombardment. Snowspeeders are also used to highlight the David versus Goliath metaphor, as they are much smaller but quicker, and the bigger they are, the harder they fall.
Good. Twice the pride, double the fall.
So the snowspeeders are used to trip the walkers rather than take them head on in a firefight, emphasizing the general theme of Star Wars that anyone can be a hero, no matter how small you are. The Empire asserts their dominance and actually strikes back. The rebels are left on the run and barely survive. This would set the tone for the rest of the movie, as it's the position Han and Leia would be in for the rest of the film. Even with a tactical advantage, the rebels must simply try to survive. Again, a very different position than at the end of the last movie, showing that even positive actions can lead to very negative consequences, which shows how the themes of this movie have evolved since the original. We see this complexity and theme for our heroes by the results of the battle versus their actions, as the situation only amplifies their struggles and shines a light on their development as characters. For Leia and Han, while they may have been on Hoth, they had minimal involvement with the battle itself. In comparison, Yavin and Endor were victories with Han and Leia directly involved, whereas on Hoth, they were swiftly defeated and forced to retreat, an analogy for how their constant arguing proved to be detrimental to the team, simply wasting time and their potential. For Luke, he pushes forward into the heat of battle heroically, even against the insurmountable odds and when defeat is clearly imminent, all too similar to the Battle of Yavin. However, this time, he's humbled with the very idea of defeat, and in the aftermath, he's shown that simply doing the right thing sometimes isn't enough. But more importantly, it's how he would react to this loss that would define his character, as he would use it as a means to grow, as he would attempt to get stronger, externally through his desire to become a Jedi and a warrior, but it would be the internal obstacles that would come with it that would truly challenge his idea of being a hero. But the real hero in this video is my friend in Starin Cantina, as he'll be going over the Battle of Hoth from a real-world perspective, as he dives into all the effort that the Lucasfilm team put into making this seemingly impossible feat in movies a reality. Take it away.
Thank you, Crazy Kazi. Let's get into it. I'm sure many of you heard about George Lucas' ordeal in Tunisia to capture Tatooine sequences. Yet, I'm also certain that some people are less aware of what happened in Norway when shooting Hoth planet scenes. The best way to learn about it is to take a look at this map. Here's the Finse village, from which production will have to hike towards the glacier at Camp Kurtz and Sharpman, where trenches had been dug for the battle scenes. All of this is great, but the production quickly had to forget about it. On the first day of shooting, a snowstorm hit the region, that will later earn the name of the storm of the century among the locals. 33 degrees below zero, 18 feet of snow, cast and crew frozen all day long, and sets buried under the snow. A 2-week nightmare started for the production, which sometimes looked like a construction company with all of their vehicles to progress through snow. The small village hotel, which had become the headquarters, quickly got isolated. Avalanches prevented any train to join Finse. They were trapped, just like the rebels.
Key reason for this one was that its access because of the railroad, very easily accessible.
No, that's not it.
The stew brought from the hotel crew froze immediately. Film became sharp and brittle. Fingers got stuck on the camera's bodies. The production quickly rescheduled the planning, as they needed avalanche rescuers to dig up sets that had been buried. Thus, they decided to shoot some scene right in front of the hotel door. You know, snow is snow, so no need to climb the glacier for that. And you know what? Here's my favorite fun fact about Star Wars creation. Production had thought about bringing artificial snow if the weather was not snowy enough.
Ironic.
At some point, weather got just a tiny little bit better. Production could now welcome the rebel soldiers actors, who were actually volunteers from Norway Red Cross. At least they were used to walk through snow. However, to understand some English-speaking dude talking about a weird movie, well, that was something else.
Is coming from that direction, which are 40-foot giants. You can't see them if we map them on.
I think you got it. Those 2 weeks turned into a legendary shooting, hardcore filmmaking, which without a doubt bounded the crew since it was so exhausting. Yet, as director Irvin Kershner said,
"It's almost unreal. Nothing grows here. The weather's bad, which is what we want. And it looks like another planet."
Still, can you imagine? Wind blowing in your ears, helicopters zooming by at low altitude, assistant directors shouting instructions to be heard over fans' noises, snow-plows trucks roaring around, real-scale explosions triggered by the special effects teams. Cut. The atmosphere here is quite different. Here's where Star Wars magic happens. The illusion is simple. A board covered with artificial snow, a background beautifully painted by Ralph McQuarrie himself, and miniature models of the Imperial Walkers, on which ILM visual effect artists are working with stop-motion techniques to create, thanks to hours of painstaking work, a few seconds of sequences that will blow up world audiences a few months later. What's marvelous is that decades later, those sequences still look incredible and the AT-ATs seems massive. Except this little stick, right here, when it falls. I'm sorry, I just can't unseen it now. Joke aside, it was a groundbreaking achievement for the time, and smartly combined with state-of-the-art camera controls for the snowspeeder's POV shots.
We've got 12 pots here operating 12 stepping motors, and each channel can be recorded separately and then played back through the memory system, and then we can build upon that to get our final motions. Okay, ready and go. 1, 2, 3.
State of the art. Well, for the 80s, of course. Those walkers needed some opponents though, so model makers built snow speeders, sometimes remote controlled, that would be shot against blue screens. And when I say shot, I mean it. Hopefully you've learned some bits about Hoth behind the scenes history. Thanks a lot to Crazy Kazi for the host, and make sure to watch the second episode of our series on my channel. You'll be amazed to see how much Hoth and Jonas' battles are connected.
Please tell us if you like this kind of double video.
If you do, we might do it again in the future.
See you next time.